Okay, kia ora koutou katoa. No mai haere mai ki te kain kōrero. It's nice to have you along. So let's just kick things off with a karakia. I'll just share a copy of the one that we're going to open with today. Manaaki tia tēnei hui, manaaki tia tēnei rōpū, manaaki tia tēnei whānau. Tai noa ki tēnei kaupapa, arahina ngā kōrero, arahina ngā pātai, arahina ngā turi nei kia puta ai te maramatanga.
Yeah.
Kia ora. I'm just going to stop sharing. We've got Zane to talk to us shortly, and Giovanna will introduce him. But before that, just a few housekeeping matters. This is being recorded, as you know, and it will be available to anyone who's registered for this later with the PowerPoint to remind you of the presentation. As Zane begins, we ask that you please engage with us through the chat. We can comments or questions, and what we'll do is when Zane finishes his presentation, we'll talk about we'll talk about the chat and have a conversation about his presentation. So looking forward to your engagement later on. So I have Giovanna here who will talk to us a little bit about Zane. Kia ora, Giovanna. You'll remember Giovanna if you were here 2 kain kōreros ago, because she spoke with us. So.
Kia ora koutou. It's an absolute privilege to be able to introduce Zane Mather for the session today. I've had the privilege of working with Zane across a few projects now at the Ihiwaka, at Te Tauri Arotake Mātauranga Education Review Office. Zane obviously has had a much longer stint than I have at Aero. Zane's sort of dipped in and out, been across the road to Te Punikokiri, a stint at Treasury, and sort of a few other roles. But the substantive time of Zane's working life has been with Aero, and it's an absolute privilege because I think for me as a colleague, one of the things that I have really appreciated is the perspective that Zane brings to his mahi as Tangata Tiriti, and the consciousness of keeping that Tiriti focus in all our mahi comes through quite strongly, and is a real good reminder for all of us in terms of understanding and trying to think how we include that in our evaluations. Zane's had a really strong relationship with our Te Opa Motu, our Māori colleagues in the research and evaluation space, and was contributed and led the piece of work on Te Reo Māori provision in English medium schools, which was greatly valued across both English medium and obviously within the Māori language provision setting. So I think today he brings a really rich and wide experience in the space, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about how he navigates that space. So over to you, Zane.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Giovanna. Thank you for your very kind words. I will do my best to live up to them and make this. I'm hoping for quite a sort of interactive session. I'll talk a little bit about the reflections I have and experiences that I've had, but sort of create a space for a kōrero at the end for others to share as well, and just make that as open and as welcoming as possible. Safe, not necessarily comfortable, but safe, I think is the operative word. I don't think, I think anything, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I don't think anything worthwhile comes without some degree of discomfort, but it's good to be safe as well. I'll just share my screen here. Let me know when you can see that. Cool. All right, seeing some thumbs up. All right, so I've called this Reflections on Working as Tangata Tiriti in rangahau and arotake spaces, so research and evaluation, which has been, yes, as Javeda mentioned, the vast majority of my working experience has been working in the rangahau and arotake space, and with an increasing sort of level of engagement with Māori education contexts and sort of broader Māori development contexts in my time at Te Puni Kōkiri. Before any of that, whoops. Oh. Just give a brief sort of mihi about who I am. So ko wai tēnei, he tangata tiriti au, no kotirana, no airani, no ingarangi o ke tupuna. I te taha tōku māma no te wairoa te whānau. I te taha o tōku pāpā no tauranga moana te whānau. I whānau mai au, i kirikiri roa. I tipu ake au hoki ki o tautahi. Ai, no reira, ke te mihi ki ngā wahi tāpū ki ngā tangata whenua o e rā rohe. Ko Dave rawa, ko Vicky o Mātua, ko Anton rātou, ko Abby, ko Jessie, ko Kariba o Kutaina, no Charlie tāku tama. Ko Zane Mather tōku ingoa, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I've got a photo of the Fairfield Bridge over the mighty Waikato River there. I grew up, moved around a lot, but I did grow up more or less near the banks of the Waikato River, and that bridge looms large in my childhood memories. I also moved around to the far north, to the Bay of Plenty, to Christchurch, and now been in Wellington for quite some time. And growing up, I sort of grew up as many Pākehā do in blissful ignorance of the history of this whenua. And I remember as I got older, feeling a real sense of the emptiness, the emptiness of the landscape as far as I understood it, and of course it isn't. And there are countless stories and things that I hear that were opaque to me or just missing. But I remember being conscious of that emptiness. In terms of how I've sort of ended up where I am now, so my current role is got a bit of volume coming through. Cool, thank you. My current role is rangahau Māori senior lead. So I've set up a unit to do research and evaluation in Māori medium and kaupapa Māori education spaces. This is a very small subset of Te Ihuaka, the broader education and evaluation centre here at Aero. And Javena mentioned the work I did some years ago now on the provision of te reo Māori in English medium schools. And professionally, that was sort of what got me really lit a fire in my belly to put my shoulder to the wheel of reo revitalisation, really. I sort of, I'd kind of been interested before, but in doing that work, and it was the most sort of rewarding work to do in partnership with other Māori staff here. within Aero, and I'll give a huge mihi to Karen McClutchy, who did a whole lot of the data collection, and taught me so much in that process. So that was sort of a by the end of that process, I sort of thought, this is what I want my life's work to be, and I want to be a better advocate and a better ally, and that sort of got me on a real journey. I was lucky enough to be able to take the vast majority of 2022 out to study Te Reo Māori at Te Wānanga Aotearoa. An enormous privilege to be able to spend the time immersing myself in that, and yeah, sort of given me sort of a conversational level over there, but that's an ongoing thing, of course. All right, that's enough. Well, the whole presentation is going to be a little bit navel gazing, but that's enough of the sort of explicit navel gazing at the beginning here. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how I think about my role and positioning when I'm operating professionally in these spaces. And first of all, with respect to all of this, and with respect to this presentation as well, he tangata ihuhu peo. I am. That literally means snotty nose. I am, and it's a kind of an expression that indicates that you're young and you're still learning. I don't want to position myself in any way as having a whole lot of answers to any of these what are genuinely sort of civilizational level questions and concerns, but just sort of I'm happy to share how I think about things and the experiences that I've had, the lessons I've learned. So in terms of my role, I'm conscious that usually I'm representing the Crown, and that sort of ebbs and flows as being an easier or more difficult thing to do. By definition, I'm never leading in the space of if it's kaupapa Māori research, and that's because I'm not Māori, and I don't need to be. What I want to be is authentic to myself, and while I'm not, I'm not Māori, but and my ancestors are from Scotland, England, Ireland. I'm not Scottish, English, or Irish either. There's and I think this is a fairly common experience for Pākehā of European descent. There's this big discontinuity in my understanding of who I am, where I came from, which is when they got on a boat in the 19th century at some stage, various ancestors, and beyond that, I didn't really know much. So the identity that I do have, the identity that I am seeking to embody and build into, really is defined by the relationship with that is set out in Te Tiriti. It is what it is by virtue of the agreement that sort of sits behind the fact that I'm here at all. And that's how I understand myself to be who I am. Thinking more specifically about the role of research and evaluation specifically, it's been used and it's been misused, and in general, whenever you're engaging in this kind of space, it's important to be aware of the checkered history of knowledge, power, how it's been wielded by the Crown in the encounter between the Crown and Māori, and to remember that, but don't be paralysed by it. I do have skills and knowledge that I have that can be useful, and I do desire to contribute. And what's important there, I've found, for me, is just knowing when to lean in and when to step back. It's not always the easiest thing to do as a, having knowledge. You're generally rewarded for having knowledge, and you can often be anxious to, I find myself anyway, anxious to show people that I know things, and it's not necessarily, Ruth's laughing because she's seen me during the quiz. That's not a productive way. It's not a productive way to engage necessarily. And so it's remember that the kaupapa is paramount, and that while it may feel good to be recognised for what you know, that's not the game. That's not the most useful thing I could be doing. And it's kind of encapsulated in the sort of value of mahaki, or humility. So kia mahaki is a phrase you'll often see in relation to kaupapa Māori research, but I think it's relevant just in any sort of engagement where it's be humble. Don't pretend to know things you don't know, and don't flaunt knowledge that you do have. So along with being cautious, kia tūpato, showing generosity to the people whose time you may be expending, whose precious time you may be expending. Manaki ki te tangata, be hospitable, care for people, encourage their mana, don't trample the mana of others. I mean, these are all there's some links that I'll share at the end around kind of the principles that underpin kaupapa Māori research. And I think regardless of whether you're engaged in kaupapa Māori research, they are really good principles to underpin any engagement you might be having. So that's probably about enough of that. And this is here is just kind of reflections about what I found working in partnership in these spaces has done for me, and then some of the things that are difficult about it, because it can be difficult for a whole range of reasons. A genuine encounter with a range of perspectives, basically. So acknowledging the diversity and multiplicity of perspectives within Te Ao Māori. There's no Māori perspective, and I often sort of chuckle thinking about how often I've observed generally one Māori staff member, colleague being brought in to give the Māori perspective, and the kind of absurdity of that, because as Pākehā, I was trying to reflect on when I've ever been asked to speak on behalf of all straight white men, and that tends not to happen. So noting the multiplicity and range of perspectives, and just the great joy of that is the challenge that it creates to you. The blind spots you might have, the assumptions you don't realize you've got, and I can reflect on various conversations I've had where someone says something and I don't understand it at all, or it seems irrelevant, or it seems off topic, and then later, weeks later, years later, sometimes I realized that there was a lesson there. There was something that was being imparted to me, and so trying to remind myself to stay open to that, I think is really valuable. And you know, in a nod to what I was talking about in terms of the emptiness I felt of the landscape here, I'm learning about where I am, and I'm learning about who I'm with. I'm learning about the whenua. I'm learning about the people I'm sharing the whenua with, and kind of this is sort of intolerably navel-gazing, I suppose, but that does teach me more about myself, you know, in as much as that is that sort of relational that relational identity is core to who I am. Big challenge is just around carving out the time to do relationship building properly. It just non-negotiably takes time. You can't build trust overnight. You can't build trust by going in with a really set and clear idea of what it is that you're wanting out of the relationship. You build the relationship first. That's what I found has worked for me. And that can be really difficult. That can be really difficult to do in a context where, you know, you have timelines that tend to be externally imposed. And so what you want to be able to do is invest that time outside of the context of any specific project, outside of the context of any specific, you know, piece of mahi that you're trying to do, so that, well, not so that, but what that means is that when you do have to come and ask for something, you've got a basis on which to do that, and you've offered something as well. Always remembering that the demands on your Māori colleagues' time are huge. They're constantly being, there's the what's termed the cultural tax, where, and that can be as simple as, oh shit, we need someone to bless the kai, and you're looking around to see, you know, who's going to be able to do that. So these are little things that I found I could take on, or even just to be conscious that of the number of demands and that are on my Māori colleagues' time. And then what's really difficult sometimes is try to represent those things to other Pākehā. And there's a really important balance to strike there as well, of advocacy that doesn't step over the line into being, hey, let me tell you how it is, because obviously people advocate for themselves, and so yeah, there's that. That's just a constant sort of negotiation, a constant sort of tightrope to walk, of being, you know, being an ally, being a partner in the treaty sense, without arrogating for yourself, and end up speaking for somebody when you don't. That's not, to me, that's not the right sort of role to be in. But it can be incredibly powerful to uplift or to even just repeat sometimes, as long as you give credit. You know, something that someone said, because it might be heard differently. It might be heard, sadly, often. It might be listened to more. Yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit heavy, but so and not particularly. Also, I'm not seeing anybody's reaction, so I'm hoping there's not a whole lot of horrified faces around here. But that seems like a reasonable segue to talk a little bit about comfort and intentional discomfort.
There's lots of hearts. Did you see the hearts?
No, yeah. I'm not seeing the hearts. That would have. I think that would have been quite nice to see. That's good. That's good.
And more.
So growth, as I mentioned, it's not always comfortable. But I've benefited from I can just think throughout my career and throughout my life of the atawhai, the generosity of so many people who have been willing to bring me in to something, to teach me things, and it's a productive space, right? So, and just kind of, I was going to say kind of on a personal note, it's all been pretty personal. I grew up without, and this is a reasonably common thing for a lot of secular Pākehā, I imagine, but I grew up without a lot of engagement or interaction with any kind of ritual context, really. I grew up outside of church or anything like that. And to be really frank, it freaks me out. I don't. If I'm in a context where there are sort of symbolic actions going on, I'm not trying to universalize this experience, but I imagine it does resonate with some of you at least. I'm uncomfortable. I'm deeply uncomfortable with the sort of the notion that this action means something beyond what the action itself is. And I think some of that comes from not knowing what to do. Some of it comes from just not understanding why, the history of why these actions are taking place, these ritual actions. And so encounters or ritual encounters such as pōwhiri, mihi whakatau, anything that really happens on a marae, I felt that discomfort. Increasingly sort of less so, but it's always kind of there a little bit. But I found generally nothing bad actually happens, and the implication of unseen realities. And once you sort of understand a little bit more about why it's happening, actually does sort of situate you in a different space, and a receptive one, if you can allow it. And that's always been a challenge for me, and I think always will be. Make mistakes all the time. I accept that I will make mistakes. I want to make sure that I don't center my own experience if I do make a mistake. It's going to happen. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Try not to make the same mistake again. And the last thing I'll say about this is that it is and this is why I say intentional discomfort. I'm conscious that as a member of the majority culture in most ways, I've always got the option of retreat. I can always choose not to engage in these spaces, and that's not what I want to do, but it's a privilege that I have. So just being conscious of that I am choosing to lean into an uncomfortable space often, and for many people, and it cuts across all sorts of different identities, obviously, but for many people, that's not a choice. It's just discomfort is just how it is. So that's a sort of way I think about it, to put it in perspective for me, that my slight worry that I'm going to step out of the line during a pōwhiri or some such is something I can probably manage. All right, I think that's probably enough of my rambling. I'd be really keen to sort of open up a space now for we can have a look through some of the questions or comments that have been put in the chat, but otherwise for people to just encourage you to share your experience.
Okay. I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up, Zane.
Right.
Thank you so much. Do you want to stop sharing and come back to your presentation at the end, because it's got some links, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And then we can see people. And please feel free to indicate if you want to actually talk to your question or make a comment. I'll just read a couple of comments that have happened. But before I do, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that resonated for me and I thought really useful, and I'd be interested in how it resonated with other people, and that's around your own personal journey of awakening, I would say. Oho, is it? Oho, atu? But sort of understanding things that were invisible to you, and growing up and so on. So I'm really impressed at the level of exposure that you have modelled for us, really, around your own personal journey and the things you've grappled with. It's just so refreshing to hear the personal story that goes along with the work you're doing. Really appreciate that level of frankness and honesty that you've been sharing. And I thought the other thing around that you've talked about is that the kaupapa being paramount in everything you do, the humility that you approach things with, not demonstrating, knowing when to lean in, I think you said, and when to step back. And I think that for me, I thought that was a really great takeaway around that. So Laurie commented, and please speak to this if you want to say a bit more, Laurie, around sitting in the discomfort is just important for being good tangata tiriti. Did you want to add anything to that?
I think if I start talking to that, I might derail a whole conversation in a whole different direction, or the same direction. But yeah, I don't want to kind of take over. But that was kind of my statement about, you said something about I can't see your reactions, and I want to know that I'm not making people uncomfortable. But I think that's my reaction to that, is actually I should be uncomfortable and I should be okay with that, and I should be courageous enough to sit here anyway and learn and grow.
Kia ora. Thank you. And is it my read? Is that your comment around a good link there around waking up to whiteness? Has anybody come across this? And that's also talking about sitting in discomfort. Anyone familiar with this resource, or would you like to talk to it at all?
Kia ora. I'm sorry, it's Maraid, rhymes with parade.
Maraid. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, don't be sorry. Yeah, I just, as you were speaking, Zane, I just was like thinking that of my own kind of opportunities that I've had to practice sitting in the discomfort in spaces where like that context is created for the purpose of that. So I just thought it would be helpful to share it with this group for those interested in like really intentionally learning how to sit with discomfort. Because while, as Laurie said, we absolutely should be sitting with that and not running away when it does occur, I do find that you get used to sitting within it, and that also makes you like a better and more open researcher as you give yourselves the opportunity to sit in these sorts of spaces. And I also want to thank you, Zane, for your honesty in this presentation. Thank you. This has been really interesting and like an excellent reminder of all of the reasons why it's important to conduct our work and our positionality as Tangata Tiriti. Thanks.
Kia ora. We do have a question, Katharina. I just wanted to endorse that, and I was thinking that that discomfort is a great way to describe it. But I like the way that you talked about if you hear something you don't understand it, don't ignore it, because it might be actually great learning that you can dig into that if you've got time and the conditions are right to actually explore that. But don't ignore it, because it's a perspective. You may not understand it because you just need to understand the perspective, and you don't know enough to really understand the comment. So I thought that was a really good idea to dig into. Katharina's asking, what advice do you have for those who want to increase their cultural awareness but don't know who or where to start?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is that you should burden your Māori colleagues with a bunch of questions. No, no, I don't think that at all. I think obviously, you know, when people are generously offering their understanding experience, that's a beautiful thing to take up. There are quite a few resources that you can find online. Another resource that's really beautiful and free for New Zealanders is the tikanga courses through Te Wānanga Aotearoa, so He Papa Tikanga. A bunch of us at Aero did that, and we did it as a group, which meant that we were sort of able to have kōrero about it as well, which is really nice. Reo classes, again, there's a lot of free ones around. I'll again give a shout out to Te Wānanga Aotearoa. That was a really beautiful experience for me to be able to immerse myself in that. If you work at Aero, there's the Te Rito modules. And Potama Pounamu as well was another one that came out of the University of Waikato, which has, yeah, there's a lot of sort of readings and discussion prompts. And if you can get together with a bit of a group of people, because you can learn a bunch of stuff by reading, but really the kind of the knowledge that arises through conversation, you know, that sort of the knowledge that is created relationally when you interact is even more valuable, I think. But yeah, just for some basics, there are lots of resources where you can sort of read about it, see it. Yes, Alice, I can see I've got the chat open now. One of that book was awesome. I got somebody to give to me for Christmas, a Secret Santa, but I knew who it was, and I knew getting for me, so it wasn't very secret at all. But that is one of the links that I've suggested on the last slide there.
I think it's always an idea to, you talked about working as a group around a resource. So it's always good within your working environment to set that up if you can, or to ask for support with that. It might be time, or it could be about buying a resource or actually enrolling in a course. And I think that's actually probably the things that really make a difference, is you've got people that will kind of support you in your journey, that you can, you know, openly discuss some of the things you're finding difficult to understand. People contribute their own experiences. It's a really rich time for growing your knowledge. Okay, is there anything else that people want to raise? Anything that resonated with you in particular that we can take away with us for the work we do?
Kia ora, Zane. I am a researcher at Christians Against Poverty. My name's Alice. Really appreciated what you shared and your posture and your self-awareness that you bring. I would love to hear more from you on that whole knowing when to lean in and when to not, especially when it comes to discerning whether it's a research or evaluation context where our skills can be helpful to tautoko tangata whenua as non-Māori, and where actually it's more appropriate to leave that as a Māori space for Māori, you know, to enhance cultural safety and other considerations, I guess.
Yeah. if I knew a way to think about that worked in every context at all times, I would certainly give it. But I think it's about cultivating a sensitivity to where that line is, and it just varies by the context. Often, often you'll be asked, in which case, great, that's fine. You sort of understand there's an opening there. But I think where that's not necessarily what's happened, but you feel like you have something valuable to contribute, just sort of humbly offering it. It's sort of like picking up a tea towel, in the wharekai, where you can, if you can kind of see that there's something you might be able to add, and sometimes that won't be that welcome, sometimes it'll be like, yeah, no, that's cool, we've thought of that, or no, if we wanted that, we would have asked, and try not to feel try not to personalize that too much if that is what happens, but just in the I think another sort of kaupapa Māori research principles helpful here to sort of guide that in general terms, which is whakaro no titiro kōrero. So first listen and watch, and then speak. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that sort of should give you a bit of a sense of the ratio of knowing when to kind of offer your contribution. Don't jump straight to it, but if as you're watching, God, this is sounding very much like advice, but what I sort of mean to frame it as, this is how I've kind of tried to think about it, and kind of feel like I understand where the gap might be, or where the thing might be that I could help before I jump in there. There's no recipe to it, but just a sort of a cultivation of that sensitivity, I think.
Thank you.
We just had a comment from Dorothy around some advice she'd got, which helped her, was that remembering that not all Māori are in a position to engage with other Māori for a whole range of reasons, and passion for the mahi, ability to build strong relationships, and a respectful, open approach will take you a long way. Yeah. So, okay. So, please let us know if you have anything else to offer in terms of a comment or a question. There are some people who are having to leave now, and as long as we feel that everyone's had an opportunity to contribute. Thanks for the things that you were posting; they're really helpful, and I'm sure Zane appreciates the feedback, especially when you've been so introspective. As you think that's a problem. Well, it sort of usually is, but on this occasion, we actually are relying on your ability to actually share your own experiences. So it's actually totally appropriate, and we thank you for that.
You, Ruth. Yeah, and look, I love kind of thinking about this sort of thing, and talking about it. So feel free to reach out, via email or anything. If there are other things you want to pick up or don't feel comfortable doing in sort of open forum on, it's what I try and live and breathe. So I'm really happy to keep up kōrero.
Great. Do you want to just share your screen again, Zane, for the last slide? You've got some links there, and maybe we'll perhaps cut and paste them into, or we'll send out the PowerPoint for you, but maybe we can cut and paste them into the, I will do that right now, into the chat. No.
And this is just a very very small selection of obviously what's out there, but these are things that I found influential or interesting.
There's the Avril Bell one, and of course the very famous one by Linda Tuahuai Smith, and there's I actually can't pick them up, so I'm sorry, I can't do that. So if you can, we'll send them out to you if you need to follow those up. Okay. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind stopping sharing, and I'll share my my screen with the karakia to finish when I can find it. Sorry, it's gone. I'll just say it. Here we go. Unihia, unihia, unihia ki te uru tapanui, ke wātia, ke mama. Oh, sorry, I've lost my thread, sorry. Kia wātia, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua I te aratakata. Hoia rā I rongo, whakairia ake ki ronga, kia tina, koie, tae ki e. Thank you so much for your contributions, and have a good day. Yeah, we finished a little bit early, so we've given you some time for lunch for your kai. So, ka kite.